Hello everyone. I'm Z from Susan's family. Today, I'd like to introduce a shawl from the Nordic Aesthetics series, the Angus shawl. For this electronic tutorial, you can find the chart on the website by searching for susud.com. The shawl is divided into the main piece, lace trim, and tassels. Start with the main piece, then move on to the lace trim. Finally, make and attach the tassels. Now, let's start by learning the main piece. The main piece uses cable cast-on method to cast on a purl stitch. Then continue knitting in rounds upwards. To make it easier to explain, we divide the main piece into section 1 and section 2. Section 1 is the middle part, which is solid color. Section 2 needs to knit the jacquard method in the middle part. After finishing the main piece, bind off partially, then cut and divide the main piece. Next, sew the edges together. The stitches used include knit stitches and M1BL. Now, please watch the demonstration. First, use straight needles to knit section 1 of the main piece. For a clearer demonstration, I will demonstrate using thick cotton yarn. The colors are random. For specific yarn details, color schemes, and hook sizes, please refer to the detail page of our product and the chart. First, refer to the chart and cast on using the color 1. Make a loose knot. Slightly tighten the loop. Unless otherwise specified, the yarn tails should be about 10 centimeters. This is the first stitch. Next, use cable cast-on method to cast on a purl stitch. Don't pull the yarn too tight, otherwise, it will be difficult to pick up stitches later. Always insert the needle between loops for casting on. Continue cable cast on. Refer to the chart for the specific number of stitches. That's it for the casting on. For the first round, you need to knit with color 1 and color 2. The different colored squares on the chart correspond to different colors of yarn. You need to follow the chart squares and use the corresponding colors for knitting. First, join the yarn. Take out color 2. And tie a knot with both yarns. Then pull the knot to the base. Since we are knitting in rounds, first roughly divide the loops on the needle among 3 straight needles. Pay attention to prevent the loops from slipping off. Next, arrange the needles into a triangle shape. Make sure the cast-on stitches does not twist. Start knitting the first round. The chart is always read from the first stitch to the left. Before starting to knit, ensure the yarn is on the right side. We will use one hand to handle 2 yarns, wrapping them around the ring finger and little finger respectively. First, knit 1 stitch with color 2. Slightly tighten it. Then knit 1 stitch with color 1. You can pick up the yarn underneath color 2. After switching colors to finish 1 stitch, you can see that there is a strand of color 1 carried across at the back. Ensure the carrying yarn is not too tight to prevent the piece from puckering. If the carrying yarn is too tight, gently stretch the piece. To level the carrying yarn with the piece, refer to the chart. The beginning and ending 10 stitches are all knit stitches. Continue knitting 1 stitch with color 2. Pay attention. Each time you pick up strands, ensure the 2 yarns do not twist together. After switching colors to knit 1 stitch, always check that the carrying yarn has proper tension. You can stretch the piece to prevent puckering. Next, alternately knit 1 stitch with color 1 and color 2. Continue until you have finished the first 10 stitches. Do not tighten the carrying yarn. Note, after switching colors to knit 1 stitch each time. Also ensure that the carrying yarn has proper tension here. After completing the first 10 stitches, work a M1BL with color 1. Wrap the yarn clockwise with your right index finger. Place the loop on the right needle. Slightly tighten. The M1BL is completed. Continue to knit one stitch with color 1. Make the stitch right after the M1BL slightly tighter, since this section involves knitting many consecutive stitches with color 1. We have already knitted 3 stitches with color 1 here. Now let's carry color 2 along. Pick up color 2 with your index finger. Pull color 1 from underneath. Continue to knit one stitch with color 1. Color 2 has now been carried once. The carried yarn should also be level with the piece. This ensures the piece remains flat. Because we carried the yarn earlier, these 2 threads will twist together. When knitting subsequently, pay attention to separating them. Next, work a M1BL with color 1. Wrap the yarn clockwise and place it on the right needle. Continue alternating between color 1 and color 2 for 1 knit stitch each. Finish this round. Knit the stitch after the M1BL a bit tighter. Pay attention that after switching needles and finishing one stitch, you must ensure the carried yarn has appropriate tension. Now, we have finished the first round. Continue to the second round. For the first 10 stitches, alternate between color 2 and color 1 for knit stitches. Let me emphasize again. When switching colors while knitting, don't pull the carried yarn too tight. Ensure the piece lays flat. If it gets too tight, you need to stretch the piece promptly. After completing the first 10 knit stitches, work a M1BL with color 1 for the increases on the back of the main piece. All are M1BL. Later, I will simply say, increase. And, besides increasing, the rest are knit stitches. After completing, when you reach the position for the increase from the previous round, normally work one stitch with color 1. Then continue to knit one by one with color 1. Keep knitting until you finish the middle section of color 1 loops. Note: for the same color of yarn, if the number of consecutive stitches is less than 5, you can simply switch colors and continue knitting. If you knit 5 or more consecutive stitches, you need to carry another yarn in between. For example, in the middle of the first round, there are 6 consecutive stitches with color 1. After knitting 3 stitches, we carried color 2 once. If you knit 7 or more consecutive stitches, you need to carry the yarn multiple times in between. Refer to the chart, and you will find that, in the middle of the second round, you need to knit 6 stitches with color 1, plus 1 stitch with color 1 at both ends. That means you need to knit 8 consecutive stitches with color 1. Therefore, you need to carry color 2 multiple times. Here, we have already knitted 3 stitches with color 1. Next, carry color 2 once and knit another 3 stitches. Pay attention to stretching the piece timely. Then carry color 2 again for the remaining 2 stitches, which is essentially working an increase stitch. Then knit 1 more knit stitch. This way, the 8 consecutive stitches with color 1 are completed. And we have carried color 2 twice. Continue to alternate between color 2 and color 1 for the remaining 9 stitches. Now, round 2 is completed. Continue to work round 3. After section 1, the first and last 10 stitches of each round. Follow the same color change method as the first 2 rounds. That is, start by alternating between color 2 and color 1, and end by alternating between color 1 and color 2. For the middle section of each round after section 1, use color 1 for knitting. As you progress, this section will have more stitches. When knitting this middle section, be mindful to carry color 2. The middle section of round 3 consists of 8 stitches with color 1, plus 1 stitch of color 1 on each side. That is, knit 10 consecutive stitches with color 1. When carrying the yarn, do it after every 3 stitches. After finishing the consecutive stitches with color 1, alternate between color 2 and color 1 for the remaining 9 stitches. Now, we have finished discussing round 3. Continue to knit round 4. I have already completed it. The method for this round is identical to the first 3 rounds. That is, the middle section. Increase 1 stitch on each side. And work even in other positions. Refer to the previous demonstration. To finish round 4, we will consider the side with a braid-like texture as the right side. When counting rounds, at the positions of 10 stitches on both ends, count any column of braids. The lowest braid is formed by the cast-on stitches. Start counting upwards from the second braid. 1 braid represents 1 round. 1, 2, 3. The loops on the needle are the final round. Therefore, this means you have completed 4 rounds here. After finishing the first 4 rounds, refer to the chart. Continue with the 5th round. In the middle section of the 5th round, do not increase stitches on both sides. That means you will work even throughout this round. After completing the 5th round, to make it convenient for subsequent rounds, on the 5th round, at the beginning of this section, where there are no increases, place a stitch marker on any loop as a mark. If you don't have a stitch marker, you can use a safety pin or paperclip as a substitute. When you reach the stitch marker position in the next round, make sure to place the stitch marker on the right side of the piece. As you continue, the number of stitches in the middle section will gradually increase. To make it easier to work, distribute the loops evenly on the needle as needed. For easier explanation, we will refer to the rounds with increases at the middle section as increase rounds. Rounds without increases are called even rounds. After finishing the first 5 rounds, continue with rounds 6 through 10. I have already completed these rounds. The round with the stitch marker is round 5, counting upwards from the top braid. It should be exactly 5 rounds. These 5 rounds are all increase rounds. After completing the first 10 rounds, refer to the chart. Round 11 is another even round. You will notice that, starting from round 6, after each consecutive 5 increase rounds, there is 1 even round. Follow this method to finish the remaining rounds in section 1. Note, after completing each even round, refer to the demonstration of round 5, and make sure to mark it timely. You can move the stitch marker from the bottom to the corresponding position above. This makes it convenient for subsequent knitting. Up to this point, section 1 is completed. After completing section 1, continue with the first round of section 2. The sample stitch count has fewer rounds, focusing mainly on explaining the method. In the middle of section 2, you will need to switch colors to knit the intarsia pattern. Before knitting, you can first check the corresponding square. For the middle part of this round, the contrasting color yarn is color 2. Therefore, finish the first 10 stitches normally. Then knit the middle part. For the increased stitches on both sides of section 2, just follow the method from section 1. First, use color 1 to complete the corresponding number of stitches. After completing, use color 2 to knit 2 stitches. Pay attention that the carried yarn should not be too tight. Continue switching back to color 1, finish knitting the middle part, then complete the rest of the round normally. Since the complete chart is too large, it's inconvenient to display it fully. Only the first 4 rounds are shown in full detail. Please refer to the chart and finish rounds 2-4 accordingly. I won't be knitting these rounds here. The remaining rounds are shown partially. For the omitted half, you can trace back from the last square all the way to the first square. This means the color schemes and stitch counts are symmetrical. For example, in round 5, start by knitting normally until you finish the squares shown on the chart. This means completing half of the stitches. The sample is already finished. Next, knit the other half, maintaining symmetry in the color scheme as before. That is, 2 stitches in color 1. One stitch in color 2. Then complete the middle section entirely with color 1. Finish with normal knit stitches. Next, follow this method to knit the remaining sections symmetrically according to the chart. Additionally, after completing the first 9 rounds, the middle color in round 10 is color 3. Therefore, replace the 10 stitches of color 2 at the beginning and end with color 3. Starting from round 20, switch color 3 to color 4. This means that whichever color is used in the middle of a round, you should change to the corresponding color at the beginning and end. When switching colors, cut off the original yarn. Then join the corresponding color and continue knitting. Note that when the stitch count increases later on, use a shorter circular needle for knitting. When even the shorter circular needle becomes insufficient, switch to a longer circular needle for knitting. When changing needles, simply use the corresponding needle to complete one round. After finishing the entire round, all the straight needles will be removed. Next, Everyone refer to the chart and continue knitting until the second to last round of section 2. After you finish the second to last round, I will explain using a small sample for the last round and binding off. Since the small sample has fewer stitches, continue using knitting needles. First, knit the last round normally until only 10 stitches remain. The small sample is now finished, so there's no need to knit the remaining 10 stitches. Cut color 4. Leaving only color 1. Here, you can tie the yarn tail and color 1 together to secure it. That's how it's done. This concludes the last round. Now, let's start binding off. First, knit 2 stitches. Then pass the first stitch over the second stitch. This binds off 1 stitch. Continue with another knit stitch. Pass the first stitch over the second stitch again. This binds off another stitch. Continue knitting and binding off until you reach the position of the first 10 stitches. This means completing the column of braids along the edge. Once done, leave the remaining loops unknitted. Stretch the loop. Leave a yarn tail and cut the yarn. Pass the yarn tail through the loop. Pull tight. That's it. The beginning and ending 10 stitches are now bound off. Next, I will continue explaining using this small sample. After completing the binding off, locate the topmost braid of the 10th stitch and the 10th stitch from the end. Mark them separately. This makes it convenient for picking up stitches later. In practice, these should be made with color 1. In this sample, they are made with color 2. Then, temporarily secure the remaining loops with a thread. Since the number of stitches is large, you can temporarily leave the yarn tails uncut. When transferring, pay attention to prevent the loops from slipping off. After transferring, leave a slightly longer tail before cutting. Then tie a knot to secure it. Ensure the piece can unfold roughly, making it convenient for sewing the pieces together later. Now, all the loops on the sample are now secured. Next, I will continue using this sample to demonstrate dividing sections and sewing. You can watch my demonstration first before you start working. First, thread a piece of color 1 through the darning needle. Then combine the two ends and tie a knot to prepare. Note: the folded yarn should not exceed 1 meter. Longer lengths are inconvenient for sewing. Here, I will use yarn randomly for the demonstration. Then, cut open the main piece. That is, along the third stitch, and the third stitch from the end, cutting between the braids. Cut separately along these areas. There are 2 consecutive braids made with color 2, which are the first stitch and the last stitch. Here, I will start by cutting the third stitch from the end. When cutting, try to cut along the middle of the third braid from the end. Make sure not to cut crooked. After cutting, you can temporarily secure this half side with a few stitch markers. Then fold the remaining stitches on this half side. Over to the wrong side of the main piece. This will position the column of braids made with color 1 along this edge. You can fold it slightly more to the back. You can start by sewing this small section, then sew along this edge. Before sewing, you can secure the yarn tail first. There's no specific requirement for the sewing method. Try not to leave long visible stitches on the right side. Note: this edge should actually be a column of braids made with color 1. The sample is sewn more loosely. You can sew more tightly in practice. After sewing, tie off and weave in the ends. Also, weave the starting yarn tail. Once one side is sewn, cut along the third stitch on the remaining side. Then fold and sew it as well. Up to this point, we have covered the main piece. Next, let's learn about the lace trim. There are two types of lace trim. One type is worked along the two edges after cutting, where you pick up stitches and knit them as one piece. We call this lace trim 1. The other type is worked along this diagonal edge. We call this lace trim 2. Let's start with lace trim 1. For easier explanation, I will divide lace trim 1 into 3 sections. Section 1 and Section 3 are worked with a rib stitch pattern overall. Section 2 requires the stitch method. After completing all rows, you can bind off the stitches. There are several new stitch techniques involved, all of which are marked in the charts. I won't list them one by one. Next, please watch my demonstration. Let's start with row 1. Row 1 is worked by picking up the color 1 braids and knitting along these two edges. First, have the right side of the piece facing you. The lace trim has a large number of stitches. Overall, you will need to use 2 circular needles for knitting. When picking up stitches, you can use a straight needle to assist. When there are many stitches, transfer them to the circular needle. Start by inserting the needle into the braid where the stitch marker is. Take out the corresponding color of yarn. Then join the yarn. Note: for lace trim 1, always use 3 strands of the corresponding color held together. If there are only 2 skeins of the corresponding color left, you can take 1 skein from both the center and the outside of the skein. If only 1 skein is left, make a slip knot and stretch the loop. You can enlarge the loop significantly. Here, I'll demonstrate the method. I'll pull it relatively short, then thread it through the loop. Each time, you can pull it quite long. This way, it becomes 3 strands of yarn. I'll also pull it relatively short. And pause after pulling a section. Then start joining the yarn to knit. Each time you're about to finish, pull another section again. Here, I'll demonstrate using just 1 strand of thick yarn. Make a slip knot with the yarn and slightly tighten the loop. Pick out the loop. And complete the joining. At the same time, I've picked up and knitted 1 stitch. Continue along the left column of color 1's braid, picking up and knitting 1 stitch at each braid, until all are completed. Finish at the bottom braid. Since the actual number of stitches is quite large, be mindful to prevent the loops from slipping off. If one circular needle isn't enough, transfer the loops to another circular needle. Next, pick up and knit one stitch on each of these 2 stitches. Then on the last loop you picked up, make a mark. This stitch will serve as one corner stitch. Next, pick up and knit along this side, starting from the bottom braid in color 1. The last stitch should be picked up right at the position of the stitch marker. After picking up the stitches, you can count the stitches on both sides of the stitch marker separately. They should be identical. If there's a difference of 1 or 2 stitches, that's okay. Now, we have finished the first row of the sample. Continue with row 2, which is worked on the wrong side. The chart shows the texture of the right side of the piece, so on the wrong side, we should work a wrong side definition of the symbols. The first stitch is a purl symbol, so you knit this stitch. Note, you need to use both ends of the same circular needle to work the stitches. After finishing the loops on one needle, then use the other end of the circular needle to continue knitting. Continue to knit one by one accordingly. Keep going until you reach the stitch before the stitch marker. After completing, purl the stitch at the stitch marker. Once done, continue to mark your stitches. Note, make sure to mark on the right side. Then knit one by one accordingly. Finish knitting this row. Note, when alternating between knit and purl stitches, make sure to place the yarn in the corresponding position before knitting. When switching needles to knit, the first stitch should be slightly tighter. This prevents visible marks from needle changes. This way, the second row is completed. Continue to work row 3. Work row 3 on the right side. The first stitch is at M1BL. Then knit 1 by 1 accordingly. Continue until one stitch before the corner. Make the first 2 stitches slightly tighter. Don't make them too loose. Once done, continue with the M1BL. Then knit the corner stitch. The stitch marker can remain on this braid. Next, work at M1FL. This means wrapping counterclockwise. Place it on the right needle. Similarly, slightly tighten it. Complete the M1FL. Continue knitting stitches 1 by 1 accordingly. Finish all the remaining loops. Once done, don't forget to work at M1FL. This way, that concludes the third row. Continue with the fourth row. We will work this row on the wrong side. Work a purl stitch only at the corner. The rest should be knit 1 by 1 accordingly. Repeat this process. Finish this row using this method. Now, the sample has completed the fourth row. Continue with the fifth and sixth rows. The fifth row is worked in the same way as the third row. That means at the beginning and on the right side of the corner stitch. Work 1 M1BL on the left side of the corner stitch, and at the end, work 1 M1FL. For the rest of the positions, knit 1 by 1 accordingly. For the sixth row, work a purl stitch only at the corner. The rest should be knit 1 by 1 accordingly. Repeat this process to continue and finish rows 5 and 6. We will call the texture formed by all knit stitches at the front and back overall as the rib stitch. With that, section 1 is covered. After completing section 1, I will continue to explain section 2 using a small sample. Start by working row 1. For this row, work on the right side. Begin with 1 M1BL. Then knit the corresponding number of stitches. The small sample is not for reference here. After completing that, work 1 RLI. That means you first pick up the yarn underneath the loop on the left side. And knit 1 stitch. This is the increased stitch. Then insert into this loop and knit 1 stitch. The RLI is now complete. Continue to knit 10 stitches one by one. After completing that, work another RLI. Start by picking up this yarn to create the increased stitch. Then insert into the loop and knit 1 stitch. Another RLI is now complete for this half. Every time after knitting 10 stitches, work 1 RLI. Continue until after completing 1 RLI. There are fewer than 10 stitches away from the corner loop. There's no need to work the RLI anymore. Now, after working the last RLI in the sample, there are 3 stitches away from the corner loop. The exact stitch count should be based on the actual situation. The chart is also for reference only. After completing this RLI, you can mark the position. Then knit correspondingly to the position just before the corner stitch. You will notice that the corner column on the right side is just a column of braids. Once you can distinguish the texture later, you can remove this stitch marker. After finishing the stitch just before the corner, work 1M1BL. Work knit stitches for the corner. Next, knit symmetrically to this half side. That is, start with 1M1FL. Then knit the same number of knit stitches as the ending of this half side. The small sample has 3 knit stitches on the left side of the RLI. So work 3 knit stitches here as well. After finishing, begin to alternate between 1 RLI and 10 knit stitches, until after working 1 RLI, there are fewer than 10 stitches away from the corner loop. After completing, knit the remaining stitches one by one. After finishing, work 1M1FL. This way, the first row of section 2 is completed. Here, let me explain the method for the subsequent backward loop cast on, whether in section 2 or section 3. Every time you are working on the right side, start by working 1M1BL. End by working 1M1FL. For the corner stitch, Work 1M1BL on the right side. And work 1M1FL on the left side. That means every time you are working on the right side, you need to work 4 backward loop cast on. When working on the wrong side, there is no need to work any backward loop cast on. After finishing the first row, continue with rows 2 through 6. The small sample is already completed. The sample has fewer stitches. For the following rows, use a circular needle. On row 2, and rows 4 and 6, work even in purl on the wrong side. Rows 3 and 5 are worked on the right side, except at the backward loop cast on positions. All other stitches are knit. Follow this method to complete the first 6 rows. To count the rows, you can count the column of braids at the corner. The total number of braids plus 1 gives the total row count for the lace trim. After completing the first 6 rows, continue with row 7. Start by following the chart for the initial few stitches. The stitch count from the small sample is not referenced here. Once done, knit a 3/3 RC. You will need a cable needle for this. Choose one that is about the same thickness as your circular needle. First, transfer the 3 loops on the left side to the cable needle. Then place the cable needle in front. Knit 3 stitches from the back. Make the first stitch slightly tighter. Pay attention, don't twist the cable needle. After completing these, knit 3 stitches on the cable needle. This way, you have completed a 3/3 RC. Continue with the second 3/3 RC. First, transfer 3 stitches to the cable needle. And place it in front. Then knit 3 stitches. Knit 3 stitches on the cable needle. Another 3/3 RC is completed. Repeat this process. Continue knitting each 3/3 RC. Not counting the corner stitch, keep knitting until Fewer than 6 stitches remain on this side. After completing the last 3/3 or C here, the remaining stitches should be based on the actual situation. The chart is for reference only. The stitch count in the sample is not for reference here. If you lose count of the remaining stitches, you can use a stitch marker to separate them. This half should start from the symmetrical position and continuously knit the 3/3 or C. Keep going until you have fewer than 6 stitches left. Continue normal knitting for the rest of the positions. Follow this method to finish this row. After completing it, continue and finish rows 8 through 10. Among these, rows 8 and 10 follow the same method as the previous even-numbered rows. Row 9 is identical to the previous row 3 or row 5. After finishing the first 10 rows, I will now explain row 11. Start with normal knitting according to the chart for the first few stitches. The sample stitch count is not referenced here. After completing that, knit a 3/3 LC. First, transfer the 3 loops on the left side to the cable needle. Then place the cable needle at the back. Knit 3 stitches from the front. After completing those, knit 3 stitches from the cable needle. Similarly, make sure not to twist here. A 3/3 LC is now completed. Continue with the second 3/3 LC. First, transfer 3 stitches to the cable needle. Place it at the back. Then knit 3 stitches. Next, knit 3 stitches from the cable needle. Another 3/3 LC is completed. Repeat this process. Continue knitting each 3/3 LC. Not counting the 1 stitch at the corner, keep knitting until there are fewer than 6 stitches left on this half. After completing the last 3/3 LC here, the remaining stitches will depend on the actual situation. The chart is also for reference. For this half, start from the symmetrical position, and continue knitting the 3/3 LC. Keep going until there are fewer than 6 stitches left. Continue with normal knit for the rest of the positions. Don't forget to increase stitches in the middle here. Repeat this process, finishing this row. After completing it, continue and finish rows 12 through 16. Among these, rows 12, 14, and 16 follow the same method as the previous even-numbered rows. For row 13, row 15 also follows the same method as rows 3 or 5. Up to this point, we have covered section 2. After completing the corresponding rows of section 2, continue with the first row of section 3. The small sample is now finished, and some rows in section 2 were omitted. The first row of section 3 also follows the same pattern as rows 3 or 5. After completing it, I will continue to explain the second row of section 3. Using the small sample, we will work this row on the wrong side. Start by knitting a few stitches correspondingly. The stitch count of the small sample is not for reference. Once completed, the chart shows purl 2 stitches together on right side, but here we will knit 2 stitches together on wrong side. This will be referred to as a K2 tog from now on. That means inserting the needle into the next 2 loops on the left side together. Work 1 knit stitch. Continue knitting 10 stitches correspondingly. After completing that, work 1 more K2 tog. For this half, alternate working 10 knit stitches and 1 K2 tog. When there are fewer than 10 stitches remaining, you no longer need to work the K2 tog. On the other half, start from the symmetrical position and work the K2 tog. Then, similarly, after every 10 knit stitches, work 1 K2 tog. Continue until there are fewer than 10 stitches remaining. Follow this method to finish this row. Then continue to finish rows 3 through 6. Rows 3 through 6 have the same texture as section 1, all worked in the rib stitch. After finishing all these rows, you need to bind off. The bind off method is the same as the ending of the main piece, which means bind off while knitting the stitches. Continue to bind off all remaining stitches. When only one loop remains, don't cut the yarn. Up to this point, we have completed lace trim 1. Now, let's move on to lace trim 2. Lace trim 2 is mainly worked in the rib stitch. After finishing, bind off as usual. Next, please watch me demonstrate. Start by working row 1. For this row, first pick up stitches along the edge of lace trim 1. Then work the hold stitches. After that, pick up stitches along the remaining edge. Lace trim 2 continues using the yarn from lace trim 1. First, use a shorter circular needle to knit. This edge has these individual knots. Roughly, 1 knot corresponds to 2 rows. The overall method for picking up stitches along the edge is pick up 3 stitches every 4 rows. For this final loop, we will count it as the first picked up stitch. Next, pick up and knit 1 stitch at this knot. Then between these 2 knots, pick up a few strands and knit 1 stitch. This way, we have picked up and knit 3 stitches. Then, skip 1 knot. Pick up 1 stitch between these 2 knots. Pick up 1 stitch on this knot. And pick up 1 stitch between these 2 knots again. That is, pick up 3 stitches every 4 rows. Repeat this process. Continue to pick up 3 stitches every 4 rows. Complete the picking up and knitting of this edge. The sample has fewer rows, so the number of stitches for picking up and knitting is also less. After completing, you will reach the position to hold stitches in the middle. First, transfer these loops to another longer circular needle. When transferring, pay attention to prevent the loops from slipping off. After transferring, knit 2 stitches. For the first stitch at this junction, knit it slightly tighter. Then knit 1K2 tog. Continue to alternate knitting 2 stitches and 1K2 tog. Keep knitting until all the hold stitches are completed. Note, when there are many loops on this needle, you can continue knitting with the other end of the circular needle. Since the sample has fewer stitches, you can directly use a single circular needle to knit. After finishing the hold stitches from the middle, continue picking up stitches along this edge. In section 1 and section 3, use the rib stitch here. 1 row of tile units corresponds to 2 rows. For the edge of section 2, it's approximately 1 strand per row. The method for picking up stitches is the same as before. In the sample, some rows in section 1 and section 2 are omitted. Generally, follow the method of picking up 3 stitches for every 4 rows. For example, in this sample, there are 2 rows of tile units, which correspond to 4 rows, so you pick up 3 stitches. Make sure to knit the first picked up stitch a bit tighter here. Then skip a little bit, picking up 3 stitches from every 4 strands. Each time, pick up and knit like this. Pick up the first stitch. Pick up the second stitch. Pick up the third stitch. Continue from the next group of 4 threads, picking up 3 stitches. Repeat this process to finish the remaining sections. The method for picking up and knitting are just for reference. You can also adjust according to your preference. Just ensure that it's roughly flat after finishing. Now, the first row of the sample is now complete. Continue with the second row. The first stitch is a slip stitch. That is, pick up the stitches using the purl method without purling. Slightly tighten. Then knit each stitch accordingly. Finish this row. Once completed, continue with the third row. The first stitch is a slip stitch. Again, pick up the stitches using the purl method. Then knit each stitch accordingly. Finish this row. After completing it, the method for rows 4 through 6 is identical to rows 2 or 3. Everyone continue to finish the remaining 3 rows. After finishing, bind off and fasten off the yarn normally. The binding off method is the same as for lace trim too. It involves binding off while knitting the stitches. Up to this point, we have finished discussing lace trim too. Next, you need to attach a tassel to each of the 3 corners of the shawl. The method for making and attaching each tassel is identical. Each tassel consists of 2 parts, an upper and a lower tassel. Start by making the lower tassel. Cut a piece of cardboard. This should be about 13 centimeters in height. The height demonstrated here is relatively short. There are no specific requirements for the width. Just make sure it's not too short, as long as it's convenient for wrapping the yarn. Then cut 4 pieces of 40 centimeters threads in the same color as the upper tassel, and cut 4 more 30 centimeter pieces in the same color as the lower tassel. Set them aside for later use. I will demonstrate using a single piece of thicker yarn. Next, take 2 pieces of thread in the corresponding color for the lower tassel, and hold them together. Wrap them around the cardboard in circles. Here, I will again demonstrate using just 1 thread. Refer to the chart instructions for the specific number of rounds. After wrapping, cut off the yarn. Then cut one side open. Next, use a longer yarn tail to wrap around the middle several times, and tie a knot to secure it. Next, take the shorter yarn tail at the top and combine it with the thread below. Then use another shorter yarn tail, about 1 centimeter away from the top, to wrap a few times around. And knot to secure. Finally, trim the bottom slightly to lay flat. This way, the tassel below is completed. Next, follow the same method. To make another tassel at the top, note, the two groups of yarn tails used for tying the top tassel should both be the same color as the tassel. Here, I have already finished it. Next, combine the two tassels. First, thread the yarn tail of the bottom tassel onto a darning needle. Then, pass it through the middle of the top tassel to the top. Finally, trim this thread from the bottom tassel, slightly shorter, so it's roughly level with the top tassel. This way, the entire tassel is completed. Next, secure this assembly to one corner of the shawl. You can sew a few extra stitches for security. Finally, tie a knot to secure it. Hide the two yarn tails within the tassel. Next, follow this demonstration to complete the remaining tassels. Up to this point, we have covered everything about this shawl. If you have any questions during the process, don't hesitate to reach us via our website, Susan's Family, supporting your handwork experience, sharing the joy of life. Thank you all for watching. See you in the next episode.